Hello, Kardak Radio. We are here live streaming on Kardak Radio on December 30th, our last program of the year. We cut that short, didn't we? On a Sunday, tomorrow is the last day of the year. So we are here 2018, December 30th, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, all time zones in between and around the world. We are bringing to you more information about Spiritism. Now, as you can see, the room I'm in is pretty empty. I am just to give you an update. We are moving from this place. We're going to be in a temporary place for January, February, March. And then we will then probably take April. I may not be able to stream much in April, and then we should be in a new place in April. So that's kind of the housekeeping of what we're doing here on our weekly Sunday night radio program. So, important things coming ahead. I'll keep every Sunday night, keep you informed. And of course, why are we here? We are here because of this guy, Allan Kardec, our favorite codifier, our only codifier of Spiritism. I can't stress enough. You can find his Spirits book. You can click on his picture on my website, nwspiritism.com. It will take you to the EDI bookstore. They're actually having a sale, I think, at the end of the year, so it's probably not too late to get this book. You can also find it, of course, on Amazon.com, and you can put in Allan Kardec space PDF. You can find all of his books on PDF. As I said before many times, that's how I found his book. Now, tonight we're talking about, on my book, we're going through one verse at a time. We're on verse 15, and which in here, it's chapter 15, and it's all about unconditional forgiveness of offenses. This is a poem that I took as a structure for my book, as recommended by Herculano Pierres, saying you should take this and say this is kind of the blueprint of how to live, and and of course how to live in order to ascend to it. Because why are we here? We are here to get ready to become educated, to learn, to mold ourselves, to renew our character, to replace primitive emotions with advanced emotions, get rid of hate, envy, all of that, and to improve ourselves. And this is a wonderful 24-verse poem, and it's very short. And in verse 15, it's unconditional forgiveness of offenses. Very interesting, is it not? So let's get into it. But first, I want to say, please tell all your friends about Kardec Radio. It seems to be growing every week. More people listen to Kardec Radio. More people are coming to the Kardec Radio Facebook page. There's other live streaming events by many other better people than I am on Kardec Facebook page, radio Facebook page, and Kardec Radio itself has 24 hours of radio programs per day. And oh, hi, Barry. Good evening to you. 24 hours a day. You can always listen to it. And of course, you can go to my blog, nwspiritism.com, and there's all sorts of articles on different aspects of Spiritism. I have the list of my books on the right-hand side, and I have, I recommend everybody to look at this series of 3 books, Heaven and Below, and this should really answer a lot of your questions. These 3 series of books were all done, brought by high spirits, talking to the Reverend G. Val Owen, and it's extremely revealing about the spirit world. And of course, in each one of the chapters, I go there, in each aspect that I'm revealing to you, I also put that against what's been told to us in the Spirits book, the Allan Kardec's book, Chico Xavier's books, Leon Denis, Yvonne Piera. I try to bring all the different spiritist literature for you together. So now let's talk about, hello, Gian. Oh, thank you. And Happy New Year from Brazil. Happy New Year from the United States to you. And 2 days from now. Yes, no, actually, almost less than a day, actually, and shorter in Brazil. They're ahead of us. So let's talk about unconditional forgiveness of offenses. There are many aspects to the requirement to unconditionally forgive others before one can find inner peace, right? Primarily, there is the anger inside you, right? Because when there's anger inside you, do you have peace? No. You have this this swelling, right? You have this confusion. You can't concentrate, etc. So anger, we have this because anger is a primitive emotion, meant mostly to keep us alive, but is of less use in a civilized society. Anger unbalances you. It adds stress, which destroys your harmony and turns good vibrations into out of sync tones and holds you back spiritually. So when we become a planet of regeneration, we are a planet of atonement now, right? We're going through the civilizing period where we learn that every action has a reaction, also called karma. Not everything is that. Rodrigo of the Oregon Spiritual Society wrote a wonderful article that, the lot of experiences you go through are just experiences you need to round out. It's not necessarily because of some past action. So, be careful of that. But many actions are because of past actions. And those are things to learn, to teach us how to take out our primitive emotions like anger. Because we've all learned when we see someone on a TV news or something murder someone who does something terrible, what we should think is that poor person who did that is going to have to learn a tough lesson in their next and maybe the next life after that. And also think, and we shouldn't hate that person because most probably, maybe not everybody, we've been there too. We've all been a more immature spirit and we've had to learn that. So, but let's get back to anger. What are the effects of anger? And the Spirit Joanna, through the Spiritist medium Devaldo Franco, tells us about anger and the harm it causes. It's pretty extensive. This is what she says. The sensation of actual anger has its roots in non-digested conflicts that were stored in a subconscious since childhood. They rise back again whenever some equivalent vibration reaches the fulcrum of the filed remembrances. When such occurs, they unconsciously exclude all the unpleasant but still living incidents that were covered by the thin layer of forgetfulness. Anger easily installs in people who lost their self-esteem and are complacent in the image that they project and not their self-value. In those cases, insecurity supplies the short-temperedness and vitalizes the dependence on someone else's support. In conflict, the individual is unstable because one does not rationalize the unpleasant occurrences, preferring to react in affirming one's authenticity. That reaction is the launching of a smokescreen to hide one's deficiency. How many times have we seen that? She goes on. Every time anger is submitted to pressure and is not overcome, it produces damage to the physical and emotional body. At the physical level, those damages occur in the following forms. Vagal sympathetic disturbances such as indigestion, diarrhea, acid reflux, dysrhythmia, lack of appetite or gluttony, self-punishment, and so forth. At the emotional level, those are expressed as nervousness, anxiety, and depression. Now, as she said, we can see the cumulative effects of anger may be physically disabling. A calm and serene lifestyle is mutually exclusive with smoldering anger. It cannot be achieved. Oh, hello, Rosalind. Happy New Year to you. Joanna tells us that absolute forgiveness doesn't solve anger. The root causes of anger must be sought out and corrected before the act of forgiveness effectively contributes to your physical and spiritual well-being. To fight the fires of anger within you, meditation and study should be pursued, understanding that we have lived through hard trials in the past and experienced disappointments in our current life, coupled with the knowledge that we are all immortal spirits who have traveled through difficult episodes, will enable you to look at actions from a higher perspective. How many times have I said that? Kind of try to get on top of that 10,000-foot mountain and look down on your life. And that rocky road ahead of you when you're at the level of the path doesn't look so rocky. It looks more smooth because you're seeing it from a much higher point of view. That is what we need to do. We need to look at our life from a higher point of view and know that these difficult episodes are just temporary, right? And this will enable you to look at actions from a higher and not have them be so dramatically affect you. So Joanna says to handle anger at its source, this is what she recommends. When offended, the individual should express one's feelings to the aggressor, to friends without complaint or sorrow. One should show that it is normal, that one deserves respect, consideration as everyone else. So she's very succinct here. She tells us that it is also important not to allow anger to turn into resentment. Just like anger, resentment unbalances the body and may cause long-term illnesses. God gave us feelings for a reason. As a primitive spirit, we need strong emotions of fight or flight, right, in order to survive. Our path to spiritual growth is one of intellectualizing these feelings and turning them into methods of understanding others and focusing our will upon the task at hand. Once we comprehend that we are on earth to make mistakes, right, just like the child who must repeatedly fail before mastering whatever they are attempting, we too are shepherded through multiple lives to allow us to overcome our primitive urges and replace them with positive attributes, which contribute to our eventual graduation to become a pure spirit. Spiritism promotes the 10,000-foot view of a story of many lives and experiences, in which we shall intersect with people who have been chosen as helpful agents or obstacles in our path, all for a specific purpose. Remember that when that person just usually there's that person at work, right, or some family member, just grates on you and grates on you. Most probably, that person is there for a purpose, and that is, and usually when someone grates on you, or it's like, it's let's say at work, who always questions you, right? It's actually, and you know that most people know this. This is making you better. Either if it's family, or it's making you able to argue and understand their point of view and argue more succinctly or more effectively, or at work is, okay, these are things I've done wrong. I have to do better next time, and not just emotionally try to push this person out. I've done the same thing, right? I've done the same thing is when I've had a person at work, a job a long time ago, just criticize. I finally had to say, look, I understand. I calmed my emotions. I said, like, I understand what you're trying to do, but you can't just keep criticizing all the time. Can we just take one thing at a time? And I will tell you how I think I should fix it. You tell me if I did right or wrong. Let me fix it. And then if that is the way we think it should be, let's go on to the next. But I cannot take this barrage all the time. And that really helped. And that person was then really one of my greatest allies, because whenever I made a mistake, that person knew I would correct it. Because isn't that what we want to see in our children, right? When they make mistakes, we don't care if they make mistakes, right? We would just love them to learn the correct lessons from that mistake. That's why everyone else sees us too. Maybe not everyone. I mean, there's people that are really mean, hopefully, but in the future, when we become a planet regeneration, we won't have that. But we just want people to learn from their mistakes. That's really what most of society wants. So once we realize this, right, when we see that 10,000-foot view and we realize these people and these things happen because of a purpose, and that anger becomes a counterproductive emotion, which only serves to delay our growth. Instead, with the foundation of spiritual knowledge, we understand our actions and the actions of others and use that to determine our current spiritual status. Analyzing every episode on earth in this manner changes the focus from our emotional state to our progress of our spiritual state, thereby exercising the powerful primitive agent of anger and resentment and replacing it with comprehension of the act in the overall scheme of our lesson plan. Once we are free of the clouding effect of our emotions, then and only then can we move to unconditional forgiveness. Now, first of all, forgiveness is hard for everyone, and unconditional forgiveness is really hard. I can remember seeing on the news where this poor woman was murdered, and the father of the daughter, and the murderer was finally, after 10 years or whatever, finally going to the death chamber, and he said, "Well, I forgive him." And I thought to myself, just before I was in the Spiritism, I understood Spiritism and was introduced to it. I said, well, that's ridiculous. I'd never forgive him, right? That guy should be dead. And of course, now I understand is that most probably it was destined for his poor daughter, to be murdered for some past effect, past action that she had, and that the murderer really had the worst part of it. That's really, I'm sure that's not easy for people to understand, but the daughter paid and now got to experience what it was like to be murdered. And she was able to go past what she had done in the past, right? And in the future, she'll have a much better life. And that's really difficult to parse what I just said. If you look at it from the point of view that we were only on earth for 80 to 100 years or less on her poor part, and then that's it, right? What I just said makes absolutely no sense. But then if you look at it from the fact that we are immortal and that you had this one small episode of this life that lasted 25 years, and it was done in order to help you improve and get to the next level, it's not a big deal. Another example was short life. Emmanuel, who was the spirit mentor of Chico Xavier. And of course, now Emmanuel, just give you some background, Emmanuel is now reincarnated back on Earth. I think he's in his late teens now. And Chico Xavier will be his spirit mentor. But when Chico was born, I think around 1910, I could be wrong. And Emmanuel then, I think, met him later in life and was his spirit mentor. And Emmanuel is the spirit author of many great books like Paul and Stephen, which I recommend everyone to read. Paul and Stephen is just really, it was the story of the Apostle Paul. And it's the true story of Apostle Paul, as Paul told that to Emmanuel, and then Emmanuel communicated that to Chico Xavier. But let me get back to the point of a short life. Emmanuel, who was supposed to write these books, had not really been on Earth in the modern time. So he was given a pretty short life. I think he was born and he died in his early 20s. And it was mainly for him to learn modern Portuguese, or, during that time in the 1900s. And that's why. Now, to his family at the time, everybody around him was like, that was horrible. This guy was such a great guy, right? He had, he just had a short life. Well, but the short life was building upon something. So that's why when you look at these things over the huge long run, it all means something. It's really all for our own good. That's why we just have to remember that. Now, let's talk about unconditional forgiveness. So the best way for unconditional forgiveness, right, is, as I said, we need to study and self-improvement so that we change, and in doing so, we remove our predilection to be offended, meaning let's avoid forgiving whatsoever. Understand Spiritism, understand people, understand where different people are on the different maturity level, right? That person who did a terrible crime may, in the next life after that, may ascend rapidly beyond us. And often we are our own worst enemy when it comes to stirring passions, right? Of course, I am. The best method to control our thoughts and our speech. The Spirit of Emmanuel cautions us to nip bad conversations in the bud. This is what he said. He says, undignified conversation always leaves traces of its inferiority whenever it has occurred. An environment of distrust immediately replaces the climate of serenity. The poison of unwholesome query spreads rapidly. After unedifying conversation, there's always less sincerity and fewer expression of fraternal strength. In its ignominious cradle are born the ghosts of slander that slips and slides amongst well-intentioned persons. Trying to destroy honest homes, inferior preoccupations arise from afar. Twisting respectable attitudes, criminal curiosity emerges, appearing where it has not been called, and emitted uncouth opinions that induce listeners to lies and insanity. Bad conversation corrupts the most dignifying thoughts. worthy conversation suffers its implacable persecution everywhere, and it becomes imperative for people to guard against its insistent and destructive siege. Now, this is so true, and haven't all of us done this? And I submit that a large part of hurtful behavior begins with a conversation that commences on an attack on others and next veers off for no apparent reason into something which touches the nerve of one of the parties. Then the accusations fly and feelings are offended and angry thoughts swirl around, which increases the temperature level of emotions and produces more pain. So therefore, you should please refrain from causing a person to be mad and to harbor resentment towards you. If a truth must be told, couch it delicately and with compassion. And if a person responds with accusatory statements, understand their pain and ignore it. The other thing happens, and this happens, and I tell you, I am still trying to stop this. And this is this petty gossip among either family members or at work. And what is most gossip about? Most gossip is about telling something bad about somebody else, something they did wrong. And I remember perfectly, but I actually had a video on this on my YouTube channel. Of course, go back a bit on these talks, everything on Kardec Radio. I upload to my YouTube channel. You can get to my YouTube channel on the right-hand navigation bar, and it's YouTube, or you can also go to my BitChute channel. I load all these programs. And I have other programs, which I do Spiritism Explored and Explained. And on that, I actually put a small 4-minute video on Socrates, the test of 3, and I don't remember this perfectly, for gossip. And I believe it was 1, is it something good about the person? Is it something helpful about the person? And is it true? And if it's not one of those, don't gossip. And that's what Socrates, this is back, 400 BC, right? Said this is what you should do. And of course, Socrates was one of the messengers from Jesus who was preparing us for Jesus, because he gave us, if you look at read the Socratic dialogues, forgiveness, all those things are all in there. It's very interesting. So one of the hardest things to do, because I understand at work especially, you have to talk about the good and bad things that some people are doing, because you have to correct sometimes what they do. And it veers off into something that could be negative or hurtful. And sometimes that's slightly necessary, but try and couch it as well as you can. Try not to be negative, just to be negative and to agree with someone, because we all get in that trap. And I mean all, myself included. So really try and get around that and work everybody. Because look, at work, there's some people who are not that competent. We all know that. But there's always something somebody can do that can be beneficial towards what the aim of your project, your task, or whatever it is. There's always something someone can be done, right? Not everyone's going to be doing every job. I haven't done every job, right? I failed, absolutely. So, and then, there's a limit to everyone. So just kind of know that, and just love everyone as much as you can. Now, let's go to what is the key to unconditional forgiveness. So what I've been saying, hello, Sylvia. Hello, and blessings to all. Blessings to you too, especially for looking forward to 2019. So unconditional forgiveness. The key is understanding. And the more you learn about why a person said or did an act that you felt was a grave offense, the easier it is to pardon them. And as you begin to forgive one after another, soon you will not find the need to comprehend exactly why an action was taken by a particular person. You will just know there must be a solid reason behind it. It's kind of like going through traffic. Now, when we were younger, and probably a lot of people still do, you would drive in traffic and someone would stop, right? And go, and you just, oh, why is this person stopping? Oh, why is this person taking so long to turn left or turn right or do something, but if you think about it, and every time you do something where you had a reason, like you're trying to read an address or you weren't sure where to go or something, or there was a car, in front of you that was stopping and you had to stop. There's always almost, 99% of the time, there's no reason to get mad at that car who did that because there's a good reason for it. The same thing people do. There was a good reason. Now, it may not be a reason you agree with, but they didn't do it out of spite to you. They did it because they thought it was the best thing to do. And that's what people usually do. They try to do what they think is the best thing to do. Now, to bolster this up, the spirit Neil Lucio writes about the talks that Jesus had in the homes of his disciples. And during one discussion, the subject of being rudely rejected when asking for payment of a debt came up. In response, Jesus told him the story of a wise teacher who, upon hearing from a student how improper he was treated as he went about the streets of Jerusalem asking for donations for the temple. And this, oh, Matthew, yes, right, yeah, I realized that a while ago. That's great, Matthew. That shows you're learning. So he was talking about a student as he went around asking for donations for the temple. And the student complained about a man who had just been offensive to him. And then the master, took the student by the hand, and both of them cautiously continued on their way. They hadn't gone very far when they looked back and saw the man fall to the ground, writhing in violent pain. Everyone rushed to his aid. They soon realized that that person who was rude to that student was suffering from deadly colic. They continued on their way when they came across a gentleman who didn't even stoop to respond to their request. He merely gave them a hard and rancorous stare. The teacher in the ward followed him, and when the strange character reached his home, they saw a small group of weeping people who were waiting for him, and that he joined them in copious tears. The two of them learned that the unfortunate man had come home to a dead daughter. They continued on begging on the street and were soon cussed at by a young man whom they asked for alms. Expectantly, they withdrew a ways, and after a half hour of observing him, they realized that the wretched man was merely insane. And the two continue on and found more reasonable explanations for antisocial behavior. Jesus, in his story that he told his disciples, he cautioned them to show mercy on these harried people, and instead of admonishing them, helped them to regain inner peace. In passages from the New and Old Testament, Buddhism, and other religions, plus messages from the spirit mediums, aren't the only transmitters of the need to be understanding and forgiving. People who have near-death experiences have come back with an even more personal story of the prerequisite for thinking before we emotionally strike back at a seemingly rude remark or action. Now, this woman named Amy, who had lived a life of agony, she had an NDE when she accidentally overdosed on pain medicine. And during her time in the spirit realm, she had a life review. Now, all this is in my one of my two books, The Spirit World Talks to Us, and NDEs interpreted by Spiritism, 12 NDEs interpreted by Spiritism. And of course, you can find that on my site, on the right side navigation bar. And I go through these near-death experiences and show people how Spiritism explains what they saw, why they saw it, what the choices they had, and what it meant. What were they trying? And what was happening in the spirit world as they were seeing all these things? Because you read about these NDEs, there's always a lot in common, but people always interpret them in a certain as they see the world. And what I'm trying to do on this is to interpret them as how the spirit world created this near-death experiences in order to say, okay, it's a timeout. Let's tell you some things you hadn't realized before. Let's give you an example of what should be done. But it's like the vice president, right? The VP, vice principal, I should say, not vice president, taking you out of class, during junior high or middle school, saying, okay, you need to stop acting like a goofball and get back to class. And okay. This NDEs are just mainly timeouts. and they're timeouts, and they say, okay, let's just evaluate what you've done. And then you, oh, okay. And then they kind of give you some more knowledge. Some people are given the gift of being able to really remember a lot. Some people less. They all feel emotion, right? And almost all of them come back saying, this life isn't the only life. I'm an immortal spirit. I mean, and of course, some NDEs are really frightening. You know, there are NDEs that you go to terrible places. And that is a lesson, a hard lesson. So let's go with what Amy, what happened on her NDE. And this is what she said. I'll read what she wrote. I've lost my temper in horrible ways, and I have had great trouble with forgiveness. And yet I felt only love and understanding through the entire life review. What it felt like to me was that I was being given the opportunity and gift of being able to stand back and more fully understand and love myself. I was able to feel exactly what others around me had felt during my life. I understood how everything I did and said and even thought had touched others around me in one way or another. Let me stop there for a second. So, example in this book, okay, you read these NDEs and you read these people have these elaborate things and they're able to talk to dead uncles or aunts or see things that happened on earth even when they were dead. And, you know, read thoughts and all these different scenarios. And I explain in that because everything we do is recorded. Our thoughts, every emotion, everything. It's like your GPS on your phone. Your phone always knows where you are. Now, if you hold that phone and that phone recorded everything you thought, not just said or did, even your thoughts, we are always watched. You have no privacy. Get over that, right? That is what's happening. They can take all this data. This is like the universal cloud. This is like beyond the by a factor of trillions of what we can do and store data. Then they can bring this data back and say, okay, this is what happened in this episode of your life. This is what you were thinking. This is what the other people were thinking. Now, and if you didn't do this is what could have happened. So think of the Monte Carlo simulations you'd have to do in order to go through every different thing that can happen. So also think about how complex it is for them to do our trials intersecting with, hundreds of thousands of other people. So let me get back to what she said. This is food for thought. So she said, I understood how everything I did and said and even thought had touched others around me in one way or another. I was even able to enter the minds and emotional centers of many who had been around me and understand where they were coming from in their own thinking, how their own personal views and life's experiences had brought them to the places each stood. I felt their own struggling and their own fears, their own desperate need for love and approval. And more than anything, I could feel how childlike everyone was. With every person I viewed, including myself, I was able to see and feel with a higher mind and eye. And the feeling I had toward everyone was nothing less than what a loving mother would feel for her own children at a toddler age. So what she just described, and she wrote this had nothing to do with spiritism. She had no idea of anything on it. She described the revelations the spirits presented to her. She was able to stand aside away from the emotions assaulting her during her harsh conversations and see for the first time the fragile state of most people. And we know this. We know this because we're fragile. We all want some sort of saying, yes, good job, right? Some sort of affirmation. And you wanted that since you were a child. And of course we want that. But we also have to take where we analyze yourself and know that, oh, I did that wrong. I'm not going to do it again. What a dummy I was, right? But again, Joanna D'Angelis always tells us, don't look back and say, oh, that was horrible, and have that as the foremost of your mind all the time. She says that when we have regrets, it's like an arrow out of your quiver. It's already gone. It's gone. Analyze it and don't do it again. Joanna D'Angelis also says the only person who's weak is the person who says they are weak. So we can all improve ourselves. Now, let's talk about where this hurts really the most and the most pain. Because if, unfortunately, the vast majority of conflict and the place where the most emotional coin is spent is where? It's in the home. It's in the family, maybe the extended family. This is where understanding forgiveness should reign supreme. Now, children who are blessed have parents that wisely perceive the ravages of different ages upon both boys and girls and forgive their trespasses. And the Spirit to Angelus talks about the importance of trials within the home. This is what she says. The planet Earth, being a world of a still relatively primitive stage of tests and atonements, it is natural that in most family groups we see sufferings of all kinds, inviting to reflection and the search for inner illumination. As reincarnation has as its ultimate end the development of values that lie dormant in the spirit, the mistakes and sorrows that are the result of unfortunate past experiences need to be rectified, and so present themselves in different forms of distress. They can be manifested under an expiatory guise through the severe process of degenerative conditions, deafness, blindness, paralysis, irreversible mental disorders, or in the form of trials, in which are revealed as infectious contagious diseases, accidents, moral pain, psychological disturbances, behavior disorders, solitude, conflicts. There are few families where pain does not present itself as an invitation to spiritual ripening and to a deeper understanding of the superior purposes of existence. Many people assume that life on earth is an enchanting voyage to a land of illusions, an experience enriched only by pleasures and enjoyment, and so they forget its transience and the phenomenon that affect all, melting away those fantasies and bringing them back to reality. Therefore, suffering is the silent friend that infiltrates in the spirit in order to make it educate or re-educate itself, developing those latent feelings of love, compassion, and charity, so that it can reap inalienable treasures beyond the grave. Those resources make our real property because they follow those who possess them, while all the other possessions remain only as memories for those who utilize them and were forced to see them pass on to somebody else's hands. So it is the duty of all parents to enlighten their children about the vicissitudes present in our evolutionary path. What she's telling us is there is no safe space in life. This is what is a bit disheartening about our current culture, where everyone wants safe space. No one wants them to say anything that could hurt anybody. Well, my answer to that is we are not here to be safe. We are here to listen to other points of view, no matter how ignorant or abhorrent we think that point of view is. It is always instructive, and it also helps us to cultivate the filter is when someone who we think is ignorant spouting something that is destructive, is we can either try to argue with that person if possible, or we can filter it out and forgive them, but then tell other people why what they said was wrong. And of course, we all have that, especially in the home. It is in the home that spirits emerge in newly born physical bodies to start their classes in the school of earth, as all of us have done. It is in the home that training begins to prepare them to accumulate the required lessons for them to rectify what was wrongly done in the past. A child is pliable from birth to the age of 15 to 18, according to Spiritism. Only in their teenage years does their personality from their previous existences come forth, and this makes the youngest years vitally important to set the stage for improvement. Therefore, one of the most important missions we all have on earth is to raise children. Only by billions of single victories, whereby spirits improve and ascend spiritually, will our globe be transformed into a planet of regeneration where hate and envy is practically eradicated. There's no wars, there's no poverty per se. Therefore, raising children to be loving, charitable, honest, and aware of the spirit realm's grand plan for them will enable collective humanity to gain the right to live in a paradise of equality, fraternity, and justice in our world. The Spirit Emmanuel implores parents to create an atmosphere of tranquility and safety, and we should not let harmful vibrations rent the environment of the home. Anger, yelling, physical punishment should be kept to a minimum By raising a child in a house full of harmony, a precedent is set for them to desire harmony in their lives as they transform into adulthood. With harmony and balance, understanding others' concerns and foibles become second nature. Forgiveness hardly needs to be exercised. Now, I quite understand too, is yes, there's some hard lessons that have to be done for children. And especially during the teenage years, where if you raise them like this, they trust everybody. And therefore, it's not saying you should say, oh, trust everybody, everyone's wonderful. No, okay, there's certain neighborhoods you shouldn't walk into. There's certain precautions you should take. So I'm not saying make it, not telling them the truth about certain things. And this is always hard for parents. You don't want to scare them, right? Because, you don't want to say, well, if a stranger comes up to you, yell immediately. Well, but you almost have to do something. If a stranger in the car says something, then you got to run or do something. So there's things you have to do because we live in a planet of atonement. But as much as possible, try to make it tranquil and good vibrations within the home. So as we learn and we study more, and we understand why people do the dumb things as we think they do, or the terrible things they do because they wanted money and they think money is the most important thing on earth, right? They want that with luxury. They don't understand that you don't take anything with you. You only take what's new up here. And that, well, good luck in your next life because it's not going to be that easy, right? So, but once we learn all that, once we learn that there really is nothing to forgive, since the reason for anyone's loss of control is understood, and your emotional reaction is one of empathy and desire to help, then you have reached a higher state. And the Spirit Joanna describes how to channel your mind to lift your thoughts to an elevated plateau. This is what she says. This is why Joanna D'Angelis is just wonderful. Optimistic thinking predisposes one to an emotional state receptive to health. Thus, it is easy to channel it toward the ennobling expressions of love, compassion, justice, equanimity, and peace. The magic land that will unite all people someday, love must be cultivated as a new experience, the practice of which will become a habit, a normal state of the spirit. Let me stop there for 1 second. So we can all think optimistically, right? We all think good things will happen to people, but we also have to think optimistically, even when we know a friend, a loved one, a son, a daughter, a parent is going through a very tough trial. Is it a fast illness? Is it down to the depths of drugs? And that they are just sinking lower and lower and lower, right? But so optimistic thinking is to look at those things that, as our culture says, is a terrible thing. And to look at that is to say, look, this is a trial that they have to go through. And they may have made really bad decisions to come to that low point in their trial. But coming to that low point will enable them to go through all the suffering and pain necessary to get out of that. They may not get out of that in this lifetime. Believe me, I've had encounters with this. I've been involved with this where someone you cannot help them, but you can just plant these little seeds, and that hopefully either when they're in the spirit world between lives or in some other life, they will remember these things that happen that you have tried to help them or whatever, and it will affect them. It may take hundreds of years, but it will happen. So let me get back to the quote. Love's power restores one's confidence in people and in life, for its presence produces stimuli that enable the blood to periodically receive revitalizing charges of adrenaline that reinvigorate the body. So these feelings in love, right? This is why a child, a baby needs love, right? It actually produces stimuli that enable the blood to revitalize. This is what Joanna is telling us. I'll continue on with a quote. Through its optics, events reveal previously unseen aspects, keeping the emotions from becoming either deadened or overexcited, while at the same time predisposing one to the humanizing quality of compassion. So what is he telling us? When we are driven by compassion, we, by habit, extend compassion to others as we would like to receive it. And in utilizing compassion, our interaction with others takes on a better and more positive approach. Joanna explains the ultimate benefit of compassion. This is what she says. Love offers the compassion that one would like to receive if the situation were reversed. It decreases the intensity of the blow and nullifies its harmful effects. Compassion speaks of God's inexorable justice, which reaches everyone and requires benevolence towards one's own opponent, rendering him or her, albeit indirectly, aware of the fact that a wrong is always worse for the one who committed it. What is she telling us? She's telling us that unconditional forgiveness comes from a self-imposed state of love and compassion. Training ourselves to peer out in the entire world through the lenses of affection and for all mankind prepares ourselves for rapid spiritual advancement and to assist others in their planned life events. With the realization that the great trajectory of lives that all spirits must trek to reach their destination comes an understanding of each individual and their circumstances at their present spiritual maturity and their required trials. Spiritism provides the framework for changing your life and a perspective of how you affect the lives of those around you. Your positive attitude and non-judgmental demeanor will enable delicate spirits to withstand their harsh episodes so that you and your family and friends may help the entire planet become the paradise it so wishes to be. And believe me, I understand this is hard because everything we see on the news in our culture is all about pointing out everyone else's mistakes and not in a not nice manner. We have to overcome that. And if you see this too much, if you see too much on the news, turn it off. I hardly ever watch news anymore. And if I do, it's only one where it's really news and not opinion. You have to kind of protect yourself against these negative emotions that overcome you and try to get yourself into a positive feeling and positive harmony. You will feel so much better. And of course, I go through all this in my book, How to Live Inner Peace Through Spiritism. And you can click on the link in my my blog, nwspiritism.com. I have the picture of the book. You click, it's on Kindle or paperback. Tell your friends about it. I believe it really should help you go step by step how to make yourself so less stressful. I cannot tell you how much better I feel and that in the whole family feels since my wife and I both found Spiritism, discovered Spiritism together. What that does for us, we don't have our, the little fights. We still have little fights, of course, but they don't escalate, right? With the kids, things don't escalate. It's just so much healthier, but it takes a lot of effort, and it doesn't happen overnight. I've been going through this process for years. And I'm not where I want to be at all, but every year gets better. And when something bad happens, my wife and I just go, oh, well, I guess we'll learn from that. When you lose money on something that you did something stupid, you go, well, okay. And we just know, right? Money and luxury and those type of things, they're not why we're here. We are here to reprogram ourselves, right? We are not this carbon-based life form that was born and then will die and disintegrate and go back to Earth and be gone forever. We are this complex soul. We are the spirit, and all spirits are truly created equal. All spirits, well, someday will ascend to the highest level. You too will be an angel of great power and goodness. You too will one day be just like, Gabriel or other angels talked about in the Old New Testament. You will one day come to earth and help some struggling group of human-like, immature souls learn and become better people, better, improved spirits. That is your destiny. So I want to thank everyone for being with me tonight. And I want to wish everyone, God bless everybody. Have a happy new year, a safe new year. and enjoy yourself. Tell your friends. Please share this this talk I've had on Cardiac Radio. Tell people about nwspiritism.com, the BitChute, and the YouTube channel. Please put these messages out so people can feel more relaxed. Tell them that it doesn't cost anything. No one wants any money. Every time, oh, Happy New Year to you. Every time I went to a Spiritist Center, and when here or in Brazil, no one ever asked, for money. They might ask for some, if you're a member of the Spiritist Center, to help the poor and help the center go. But that's it. It's, the books, you can find books in PDF. My own book, Spiritism 101, The Third Revelation, on my Facebook site, Spirits in the Spirit World Around Us. And you go to the file section, it's on PDF. So it won't cost you anything. We're here to help. And if anyone has any questions or concerns, I get emails every day from people, and I try to answer them all. And anything I can do to answer your questions, please email me. And of course, you can do that through look at my contact on my site. And happy New Year to you, Doris. And thank you so much. And we will see you next year. Of course, remember this program's same time every Sunday. Thank you so much. God bless all of you.